She said,
I went through all my training.
Immediate.
but so the Federal Reserve
That matters more than
so do you owe tax on promissory note is not good. Interesting.
no, I just say
And I go, open it up and said, only on the mouth of two witnesses on the mouth of three, and I go, this is what, where we get the concept of standing at such a what law have I broken? He's like, well, he started and I turned right over to John, you know, I said, this book is the law, this book is the law. He said, this is the only law I taught you. I mean, wait a minute. Yeah. Then he told me, he goes, I know the Bible too. I'm a ordained minister, and I started laughing. I mean, I kept it going until it's walking like you know, and I go, you are disgusting. I said, you're a contract writer for the state.
I hang out with a guy named
where do we first hear about the Magi? They are the black magic priests of Babylon.
Okay, we're going to get started here pretty quick.
They called out my name, and I said, in the flesh. You know, everybody's going, here in your honor. Yes, sir. You know, I go, in the flesh. And he looks over his glasses and he goes, let it just be here in the spirit. And I said, but it is. That's after I'm already appointed as a special executive of Zelle County. You know what I'm saying? And had ordered the IRS audit to, you know, put everything in front of them. You know, I'll tell you what, I'm about to try to file a federal lawsuit against the city of Grapevine. And, you know, and basically, you know, I want to make sure I don't mess this up, because I the private conveyance that I was traveling in, you know, was, you know, lawfully deposited into a trust. And so, you know, I was talking to the DOC the other day to make sure that all that was in good standing. I just want to make sure that's that, you know, this is the federal business number, right? This is the United States. I said, so this number is not subject to the jurisdiction of the municipality. She said, no, it's not. And I said, okay, I just wanted to make sure of that. You know what I mean? And so, you know, the whole thing is, they're known that they pulled me over and flourished. And so everything that came from there, right, everything that came from there, kidnapping, theft, assault, battery, you know, imprisonment, I mean, you know, the whole gamut, you know, and then, you know, then they, of course, they come to charge me with like, you know, a bunch of other, you know, huge different charges that then I had to deal with in the county level, you know, and, and Judge, you were fugitive from justice. Fugitive from justice, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, when we were in, another case, these are people, not persons, not these are He goes, well, I'm trying to do this, you understand? I said, no, I don't understand, I understand. You understand me? I mean, he was good, he was like water off the duck's back. He was like, yes, sir, Mr. Newman, I'm trying to understand this. I said, please don't Mr. Me. You know, I said, you can call me Vincent. You know, so they called him. Yeah, they
I was down there with the president. He was so old.
Yeah, and it was just like, you know, I mean, my brother stopped counting when 35, sheriffs came in. You know what I'm saying? They had everybody in the world and the president in there. You know, they had like 7 prosecutors in there, and I slapped like 2 or 3 of them down. You know, and finally this old, Freemason came in there and started doing his hand signal stuff, working his little magic, and then he, reaches back and gives his hand sign to the judge, goes, you want doing all this, and I go, whatever. You know, that's what they threw me at. They threw me at it. And I was looking at that. I was getting there last week. They're trying to do that.
Certified red.
That's what they give you. Yeah. I said, have you not read? You know, I mean, and I kept it, I hit him with all this stuff. I said, you will absolutely not violate my life. And he was like, why are you being so difficult? You know, and all this kind of stuff. I said, have you not read that you should not fear the man that can destroy your body? I said, I just, you're not going to do that, and I'm not scared of it. I fear the Most High. I mean, that's all I fear. I said, we'll all get it. You will too. I said, that's the only one I was attracted to. And he goes, his whole family dropped. He goes, they brought in 3 of the biggest names. I'm convinced they have a certain group of them that they can put on the growth return. The smallest one that came in was probably 6'3", 320. He was the smallest one. You know what I mean? That was bad. It's a big one. This deep water.
So I can touch it like a piece.
Water overflowing with species in the toilet. You know, the water was running. You know, concrete. You know. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
It's all very nice. I mean, it's very I did the post out.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of What's really going on is I had an airplane incident. That's why not everybody was getting four different wars.
Are we ready to go?
Okay, everybody, let's get back to your seats. We'll get started. We have only an hour to go, and Glenn's got a lot of information for us. Okay, Glenn, you ready?
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, folks, we're going to start. Here we go. Everybody give a good, warm welcome to Glenn.
Thank you. This one is called the Inquisition, and I'll go through and hopefully explain to you, and you'll see how all court cases, almost all, if not all, are inquisitions under Roman law. And anyways, first of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm a lawyer. No, I'm not a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research. I don't know everything. I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. Think about it. That's exactly what they did. The militias started the War of Independence. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical industrial complex, owns the mainstream media, and owns the mainstream media. And if you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason. It's not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So our system of law is based on common law, which is actually based on the Bible. And this court case, Strauss versus Strauss, 1941, which is actually a divorce case, obviously. Every system of law known to civilized society generated from or had as its components one of 3 well-known systems of ethics: pagan, Stoic, or Christian. Common law draws its subsistence from the latter. Its roots go deep into that system. The Christian concept of right and wrong and justice motivates every rule of equity. Someone was asking about equity. Equity is actually found in the Bible, and it's the power of the court to change the law in your case, really is what it is. It is the guide by which we dissolve domestic frictions and the rule by which all legal controversies are settled. This is the causes and necessities for taking up arms, 1775. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and publish the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. That sounds like Roman law. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us, and despotism is dictatorship, folks. So you have martial law is the law of war, okay, and that's international law. That's part of international law. It's not all of international law, but the law of war is a part of international law. Private international law is Roman law from the Vatican. And then international law and the law of nations are convertible phrases. I don't know how many people have heard of the papal bull Dum Diversus. 18th of June, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus on 18th of June, 1452. It authorized Alfonso V of Portugal to reduce any Saracens, who were Muslims, and pagans, or any other unbelievers, so anybody that wasn't Catholic, think about it, to perpetual slavery. This facilitated the Portuguese slave trade from West Africa. The same Pope wrote the bull Romanus Pontifex on January 5th, 1455, to the same Alfonso. As a follow-up to the Dum Diversus, it extended to the Catholic nations of Europe dominion over discovered lands during the Age of Discovery, along with sanctifying the seizure of non-Christian lands. It encouraged the enslavement of native non-Christian peoples in Africa and the New World. We weighing all and singular the premises with due mediation, and noting that we had formerly, by other letters of ours, granted, among other things, free and ample faculty to the said King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans, whatever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods, whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, to convert them to his and their use and profit. By having secured the said faculty, he, the said King Alfonso, or by his authority, the said Enfant, justly and lawfully has acquired and possessed and doth possess these islands, lands, harbors, and seas, and they do of right belong and pertain to the said King Alfonso and his successors. In 1493, Alexander VI issued the bull Inter Surrera. Can you mute that thing? At least the volume, because it's making noise. Somebody's making noise in there. In 1493, Alexander VI, just the speaker, he wants to hear it, but see, they're making noise. So, 1493, Alexander VI issued the bull Inter Surrera, stating that one Christian nation did not have the right to establish dominion over lands previously dominated by another Christian nation, thus establishing the law of nations. Okay, so the law of nations comes from the Vatican. Together, the Dum Diversus, the Romanus Pontifex, and the Inter Surrera came to be serve as the basis and justification for the doctrine of discovery, the global slave trade of the 15th and 16th centuries, and the age of imperialism.
Which we're still in.
Yes. This is this is a book called The Transaction of the Royal Society of Canada, second series, 1899 to 1900, volume 5, section 2, The Lines of Demarcation of Pope Alexander VI, and the Treaty of Tordesillas, 1493 and 1494, by Samuel Edward Dawson, and I guess that's his credentials. Anyways, if therefore we put aside the conventional law or treaty law of nations, it will be seen that modern international law is founded on the Roman law and on the canon law, which later was carried over Europe by the Roman Church. For even in England, up to the time of Edward III, the Lord Chancellor was always an ecclesiastic. Okay, so Vatican. I mean, whether they're Church of England or the Vatican, it's basically the same. International law is the legal system governing relationships between nations. More modernly, the law of international relations, embracing not only nations, but also such participants as international organizations and individuals, such as those who invoke their human rights or commit war crimes. Also termed public international law, law of nations, law of nature and nations, just gentium publicum, just inter gentes, foreign relations law, interstate law, law between states. So you can see how that's kind of it could cover a lot of different things, including law between American states, except that the Constitution has to prevail. Okay, so it gets kind of murky in here, quite frankly. But anyway, so this will give you an idea. International law, the law of nations, must be defined as the law applicable to states and their mutual relations and to the individuals and their relations to states. International law may also, under this hypothesis, be applicable to certain interrelationships of individuals themselves, where such interrelationships involve matters of international concern. And this is Modern Law of Nations, 1949, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. So Roman law, civil law, statutory law, versus, they're all the same, okay, versus common law. And this is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. It says, this was a war over the intrusion of civil law upon the common law. The court of Diamond versus Harris calls the civil law, which is statutory law, superior equity. And then the site that they're talking about, it says, it's difficult to see how the courts of the state are to ignore common law as a rule of decision when it's made so by statute and adopt a civil law, even though it had the merit of superior equity. And that's an 1830 Texas court case. And he goes on. In the meantime, civil law was the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire. Okay, remember Roman law, civil law, Roman civil law, and municipal law are convertible phrases. Imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Okay, so martial law creates civil law. That's why under martial law they can do anything they want. So they have to pass codes that define even murder. Okay, common law offenses. That's why they have to pass codes for common law offenses. And so, so that's what creates civil laws, all those codes. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what is called equity in its place. That's why it's satanic. Think about it. Because normally, and I go on here, oh, this is actually in the Declaration of Independence. Normally, equity is required to follow the common law, which is in the Bible, because the equity is talked about it in the Bible. It says that God will rule with equity, right? That's the power of the court to basically ignore the law, okay, or the published laws. You see what I'm saying? And so it is supposed to follow common law. Under martial law, there is no common law. Civil law is governed by martial law. All statutes are civil laws. Under civil law, equity can do anything it wants, thereby destroying the common law, which is satanic. Okay, it's actually satanic. This is stuff taken from the causes, the Declaration of Independence. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. Gee, that sounds like Roman law. And unacknowledged by our laws. Gee, that sounds like Roman law. Giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. That sounds like the minor estate. Okay, they're talking about the minor estate there, if you think about it, because the Sesticate V Act is talking about beyond seas. You see what I'm saying? For imposing taxes on us without our consent, that's the minor estate. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, that's martial law. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, that's Roman law. He's abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. And we were talking earlier about that's exactly what's going on. It's warfare, and you have to understand that. Okay, everything's about warfare. So I already talked about this. Roman laws from the Vatican. There's a common law of Europe, a common law of Russia, common law of Germany, and common law of Italy. And so Roman law comes from the Vatican. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. The Vatican's Roman law was brought into the federal government in 1871 municipal corporation at 16 Stat 419. It says right in there that it's a municipal corporation. The Roman cult's minor estate was brought into America with a code of law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432. The bar and attorneys were changed with the Bar Treaty of 1947. So Congress passed, I'm not sure if it's Congress passed, but there is a Bar Treaty of 1947. I need to look in the treaty collection and see if it's there. But everything changed after that happened, okay, in 1947. And they're all violations of Article 1 and Amendment, if you think about it. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, okay, prohibiting my free exercise of my Christian beliefs. And so, and they've done that with the 1871 corporation, the minor estate, and the bar. The bar is all foreign agents of the Vatican, and I go through here and explain it. Under the original Constitution, the government was designed not to have interference between us and we the people and international law. It says here, this is Dred Scott versus Sanford, U.S. Supreme Court. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government. So what they have to do is get you into the Commerce Clause, which brings you into the District of Columbia, which brings you under Roman law. And that's what they have to do. Everything they do is about that. It's Commerce Clause, expanding the boundaries of the District of Columbia under the Commerce Clause. Courts ecclesiastical, spiritual courts, are those which are held by the kings of authority as supreme governor of the church for matters which chiefly concern religion, and the laws and constitution whereby the Church of England are governed. Diverse immemorial customs, our own provincial constitutions, and the canons made in convocations, especially those of the year 1603, much oppression. So you see what's going on right now with Trump and Tara Peters, okay? You see what's going on with all those people where they just make the charges up. You know, it's not even a crime what they did, and they just go ahead and make them up and charge them and sell them into slavery. Well, this is not anything new. It says much oppression has been exercised through the channel of these courts on persons charged with trifling offenses within their spiritual jurisdiction. So this is all coming from the Vatican. And that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 1. So that's baseless charges. They just make it up. Okay, they'll go and who knows what they'll do. The Roger Stone, they went and fabricated evidence of obstructing justice. Okay, and they just say he lied, and you got to prove he didn't lie. And Tina Peters, not Tara Peters, Tina Peters. Okay, they sold her into slavery because she was doing her job as a county clerk to protect the integrity of the election. Donald Trump, you saw all the stuff that went on with him. There's a county sheriff in Virginia that Sheriff Richard Max swears up and down that the charges are baseless. It's supposed to be some sort of a bribe or something like that, and he's facing like 8 years in jail. General Flynn, you saw what happened with General Flynn, and Roger Stone. Trump actually, he commuted Roger Stone's sentence, and we're going to see in here that commutation is part of Roman law. This is all coming from the Vatican. A republic, if you can keep it. So how do you know when you're in a Roman law inquisition? You get to appeal. That's all Roman law. Courts ecclesiastical. Proceedings in the ecclesiastical courts are according to the civil and canon laws by citation, libel. Okay, what do you get when you get from the cops? You get a citation. And I can tell you, if I filed a lawsuit, I have filed lawsuits downtown here in Fort Worth. I had to have citations served on the people that were going to respond. Anyway, citation, libel, answer upon oath, proved by witnesses, presumptions, and after sentence for contempt by excommunication, and if the sentence is disliked, by appeal. You get to appeal. That's how you can tell you're in ecclesiastical court. Administrator. You know, all these cases are administrative. And so administrator, a person authorized to manage and distribute the estate of an intestate. Okay, so they're dealing with that minor estate. All of these courts, they always deal with the minor estate. We were talking about that with her, and we were talking about how what they do is it's trust law. Okay, you got to understand this trust law that's going on, or a testator who has no executor. In English law, administrators are officers of the ordinary. Now remember this ordinary, we're going to talk about that more too. Appointed by him in pursuance of the statute, and their title authority are derived exclusively from the ecclesiastical judge. Exclusively, only, are derived exclusively by the ecclesiastical judge by grants called letters of administration. At first, the ordinary was appointed administrator under the Statute of Westminster. It required the ordinary to appoint the next of kin and the relations by blood of the deceased. And it goes on here. And that's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1883 edition. The ordinary is a civil term for any judge who hath authority to take cognizance of causes in his own right and not by deputation. By the common law, it's taken for him who hath ordinary or exempt and immediate jurisdiction in causes. And it's ecclesiastical. In causes ecclesiastical, I should say. The name is applied to a bishop who hath original jurisdiction, and an archbishop is the ordinary of the whole province to visit and receive appeals from inferior jurisdictions. Right? See, you see, it's an appeal again, right? You get to receive, the bishop gets to receive the appeals. The word ordinary is also used for every commissary or official of the bishop or other ecclesiastical judge having judicial power. An archdeacon is an ordinary, and ordinaries may grant administration of intestates estates. Okay? So anything to do with administration is having to do with that minor estate. But the bishop of the diocese is the only ordinary to certify excommunications, lawfulness of marriage, and such ecclesiastical and spiritual acts to the judges of the common law, for he's the person to whom the court is to write in such things. And that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2. Court of the ordinary. Did you know there's a court of the ordinary here in America, or was? At least it was in 1856. In American law, a court has jurisdiction of the probate of wills, right? It's the estate again. And the regulation of management of decedent's estates. Such courts exist in Georgia, New Jersey, South Carolina, and Texas. I don't know if those courts exist today. I don't think they do. Now they call them vicinage. They call them, in New Jersey, they call it the vicinage judge, which is basically the same thing. Inquisition is one way of proceeding in ecclesiastical court. Okay? That's Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, 1750. Citation. Remember we're talking about citations? A summons to appear applied particularly to process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of the civil and canon laws by citation and libel, etc. And that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. You think it's an accident that they're issuing citations nowadays? Citation, this is also the name of the process used in the English ecclesiastical probate and divorce courts to call the decedent or respondent before them. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition. That's a cite from Book 3 of Blackstone's Commentaries. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but the nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, that's the Roman cult, folks, to be bound in conscience to account to assist use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. Well, that's taxes, folks. Think about it. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Now, Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mortmain, a use, you got to understand when they're talking about a use, that's a usufruct, okay? That's Roman law again, okay? And trusts, that's all Roman law. This is where it came into America. An act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia in 1901. The legal estate to be the cestui use. And a use is short for usufruct, and it's Roman law. This is where it's codified. Title 31 of the Code of Federal Regulations, section 363.6. Individual means a natural person. A minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. The term minor is also usually refers to an individual who has attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. Did you know that you have an account with the Treasury? And did you know there's securities in it? If you go to the Treasury's website, it says that the birth certificate's not a security. So it's not to do with the securities, it's something else. But there's something in there that's, they say there's, hundreds of millions in there, quite frankly. I don't have any idea. And that's one of the things that when I filed my lawsuit against them, I told them they could put their minor estate up their rectal orifice. And I don't care what they do with the fake money in that account. They could put that up their rectal orifice too. Anyways, that's what I told them. Because again, under equity, you have to have clean hands. If you participate in the fraud, you can't claim fraud. That's right. So you have to have clean hands. So if you did something like that, like authenticating the birth certificate, I'd never tell them. Okay, I'd never ever tell them. I'd never bring it up in a court case. If I brought something like that up, it'd be privately with the prosecutor outside of court. Okay, you could do it that way. But if you do it in court, you never ever bring that stuff. It's all about the evidence that you give against yourself. So you gotta not give evidence against yourself. A court means a court of law with jurisdiction over the parties and the subject matter. And this is really important because when they deny due process of law, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. I'm helping a guy right now that's in jail in Chicago, federal jail, and we're bringing up all these denials of due process of law, okay? Because when they deny due process of law, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. And that's really important, okay? And so most people don't have any clue that stuff's going on, and it goes on all the time. They never follow their own rules. Their rules are there to provide due process of law. And if they don't follow their rules, then that's a denial of due process of law. And they never follow their rules. Anyways, so we just point them out. And so you create appealable issues. Anyways, entity means any owner of a Treasury direct account that's not an individual. An entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, or professional limited liability company, trust, the estate of a decedent, or the estate of a living person such as an incompetent or a minor. So what they're doing, that entity, okay, is they're putting you under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. That's what they're doing. They get you into the Commerce Clause. A civilian, a person not serving in the military, okay, that all sounds pretty innocuous. A lawyer practicing in civil law jurisdiction, that sounds pretty innocuous. A scholar in civil or Roman law, well, think about that. Roman law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 9th edition. So it's all talking about Roman law again. That's the civilian's Roman law. The military police call you a civilian. Status. state, condition, situation compared to a state. Okay, so they're bringing in this estate again. A corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it's created. A corporation's a citizen's a corporation. If they're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the District of Columbia. Okay, you have to understand that. The law of status, the category of law dealing with personal and non-proprietary rights, whether in rem or in personam. It is one of the three departments into which civil law is divided. Civil law, okay, that means Roman law. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Those things which perish by capitis diminutio, of which kind are usufruct, an obligation to services on part of a freedman, contracted by oath, or matters enforceable by statutable action. Okay, remember, statutes, okay, they're all civil law. And this is taken from the commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Ulpian, translated with notes, 1874. Copies of these documents can be found on my website, linked under my recent YouTube videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 100 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the fake money, the forced loans, the securities, the cash app, gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. They're IOUs, that's what they are. Capitis diminutio is the destruction of the caput or legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, wipes out the former individual and puts a new one in his place. And between the old and the new individual, there is, legally speaking, nothing in common. A juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of three ways. One, by loss of status libertatis. This is capitis diminutio maxima. Two, by loss of status civitatis. This is capitis diminutio media. And by severance from the agnatic family. And that's capitis diminutio minima. And this is taken from textbooks of the history and system of Roman private law. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. So it's a contract. They get you into their little contract. Capitis diminutio maxima, meaning a maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. That's all block capital letters. That's the entity. That's their slave. Okay, they're telling you right up front that you're a slave. When they're spelling your name in all block capital letters, they're telling you that it's already prejudged. That's why I say it's an inquisition. Okay, it's already prejudged. They just need to get there. The highest and most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage. It's interesting that they use bondage, so they go and bond you. When he became a slave, it swept away with it all rights of citizenship and all family rights. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Plenary. Court's full and absolute power of the subject matter and the parties in the case. Plenary is full, complete, entire. Okay, these courts are under Roman law. It's a plenary jurisdiction. Okay, it's a dictatorship in there. Is what it is. Plenary is complete, entire, full, complete in the courts of admiralty and the English ecclesiastical courts. Okay, and so there's ecclesiastical courts in English, and it's Roman law. Causes or suits in respect of different course of proceedings, which are termed plenary or summary. Plenary are full and formal suits, those which proceedings must be full and formal. The term summary is applied to those causes which are more succinct and less formal. And that's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 3rd revision, 8th edition. A republic, if you can keep it. Plenary, this is taken from Wikipedia. A plenary power or plenary authority is complete and absolute power to take action on a particular issue with no limitations. It's derived from the Latin word plenus. Now, Wikipedia isn't exactly what I would call the best authority, but the next one is Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School, and that one is a good authority, and that's basically the same thing. Complete power over a particular area with no limitations. Okay, the term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress, Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. It's a dictatorship. Okay, if they get you into the Commerce Clause, it's a dictatorship. So you need to be bringing that up. It's what you need to be doing. This is Natural Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, 1948. And the part I want to bring to your attention for this particular matter is right here. Says, in other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, remember we're just talking about plenary? Plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. So if you're a U.S. citizen, it's a dictatorship.
Wait, I thought Trump disabled their, bankrupted the corporation, man. Didn't he?
I don't know. I think that he's officiating over the bankruptcy. I'm not sure. You know what I've heard? Remote viewers have remote viewed Congress adjourning for the last time. I think if when we see that happen, then it'll be done. But other than that, you won't see it done.
Now we're cheering on the warfare. You know, we're like, go get him, pay money.
As long as we're on the good side, yeah, absolutely. This is the current 13th, so-called 13th Amendment, Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, where the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So think about it. This is a Roman law amendment. It's exactly what it is. And then there's a court case. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. And that's why they do the stuff they do. Okay, but you know who's got control of that, don't you?
Yahuwah.
John Roberts. That's where I agree that Yahuwah has it, but John Roberts is the one that decides on all the treatments you get when you're in their hotel. If you can get Yahuwah to interfere and break the walls down, then knock more power to you. The Republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. So it's either a republic or Roman law. Think about it. Penitentiary. Did you know this? Get a load of this. Penitentiary was meant a penitent, an ordainer of penances, a place for penitence. Did you know that? You're supposed to do penance in a penitentiary. And that's Anderson's Law Dictionary, 1889. And then it goes on, penance is the punishment imposed for a crime by ecclesiastical laws. So this is all the Roman cult again. It's an acknowledgement of the events. And get a load of this. They can be bought off. Penance may be changed into a sum of money to be applied for pious uses called commuting. Trump commuted Roger Stone's sentence. Remember that?
Oh, so he paid for it with our money.
Well, it's not our money, it's fake money.
Is that in his treasury direct account?
Somebody worked for it.
Our money goes to the IMF.
Right. No, actually, most of the taxes now are going to the state of Israel.
So BAR, it stands for British Accredited Regency. Okay, they're regents. Okay, the bar is here. There's a bar treaty of 1947. It changed everything. Before that, because if you go back, like I have a set of the original of the statutes at large, and it goes back to book 1, right? And in there, it talks about the bar. Okay, so there was members of the bar back then, but they weren't necessarily part of this private club. But what happened is in 1947, everything changed. But I just sued the Texas State Bar, and the first thing they came back is they said they have immunity under the, they didn't say what they had immunity under, but after looking into this, somebody, it was Nelson, sent this out here recently about the International Organization Immunities Act of 1945.
No, I said,
Was that you?
yeah.
Okay. Well, so that's where they're claiming immunity, but they don't want to say it because I'm already accusing them of being foreign agents of the Roman cult. That would just confirm it. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, Inns of Court. There are certain private unincorporated associations in the nature of collegiate houses located in London, invested with the exclusive privilege of calling men to the bar. That's the City of London.
That one just came out. John Roberts was convening all these lawyers in D.C. at these, fancy hotels and everything, and plotting how they're going to handle, this whole Trump administration.
I'm not. I didn't get all what you said there. You were talking about some lawyers convening
Go
what
back
to.
one screen.
Sorry?
Go back one screen.
Go back one screen.
Yeah, this right here. This is their little private club.
Of course.
John Roberts and all the lawyers and judges who came after Trump, and this was recently in the news how they got their receipts from how they all got together at these swanky hotels and whatnot, and they plotted how they're going after the Trump administration.
No doubt. No doubt. Matter of fact, there is an American Inns of Court Foundation, and every state has a local foundation too. And there is a Texas Inns of Court Foundation. Actually, there's a Texas Bar Foundation is the one that I'm familiar with. There's also a National Bar Foundation in D.C. But there's also a website. If you do Inns of Court, you'll find a website for American Inns of Court Foundation too. Anyways, the City of London is foreign territory to the rest of England. The City of London was never conquered by William the Conqueror around 1066. So this is, there was two classes I hated in high school. One was English and the other one was history. And now that's all I deal with. It's kind of ironic. Anyways, during the convening of the Imperial Parliament, the Queen or King gives the throne speech. The King or Queen goes to a gate in that couple square mile area in downtown London called Temple Bar and requests permission to enter into the foreign territory. The Lord Mayor, who's a dictator in there, grants permission and is held as a ransom until the King or Queen
Well,
returns.
here's a good point. Trump walked in front of the king.
I know, I saw that.
And Prince Charles.
She waved him to go ahead, though. She told him to. Anyways, I think there was something going on behind the scenes. Anyways, this is the City of London. Most people don't have the courage to share this. This small little country that almost no one has heard about funded all sides of World War I, World War II, and will start World War III if we do not stop them. If you want, you can get this PDF file.
Never
So what happened, it goes back into history again. This is the concessions of England to the Pope, 1213. We will establish a perpetual obligation and concession, which will establish that from the proper and special revenues of our aforesaid kingdoms, for all service and customs which we ought to render to them, saving in all things the penny of St. Peter, the Roman Church shall receive yearly 1,000 marks sterling, namely at the feast of St. Michael 500 marks, and at Easter 500 marks, 700 for the Kingdom of England, 300 for the Kingdom of Ireland. So this is the concession where King John agreed to pay tribute to the Vatican, a republic, if you can keep it. So after the concessions of England to the Pope, 1213 was signed, King John had to make money to pay his tribute. King John imposed martial law rule and started to do things to raise money to pay his tribute. It took only two years for the people to figure out what was happening, and the Magna Carta was the result. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group on Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted. It's got 17,000 people on there. I got to hire somebody to make a bot and ban everybody off at first. Anyways, I have a private group called on freelist.org called Administering Your Public Servants. and a Google private group called Administering Your Public Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. On HowTube, I have a subscription-based website on HowTube called Sovereignty International. There's about 150 videos uploaded there. I'm on Rumble and on True Social. And I deleted my X profile because they were harassing me. Anyways, the Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of John. Neither is it a treaty, for we cannot say it was concluded between two legitimate and independent sovereignties, nor between two nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king, brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between two nations, in that one of the parties, in virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other. And that's a Canadian court case, Perlman versus Pichet. So think about it. What they did is they stuck a sword to his throat and they said, "Here, king, we want you to sign this." And that was the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta is full of prohibitions against the crown for non-judicial proceedings. So he was imposing Roman law again on the people. And they said, screw that. Section 29, no freeman shall be taken or imprisoned or seized or outlawed or exiled in any way is destroyed, nor will we go upon him nor send upon him, but by the lawful judgment of his peers or the law of the land. No bailiff for the future shall upon his own unsupported complaint put anyone to his law. How many times do the cops do that now? Without credible witnesses brought for their purpose. They're supposed to have affidavits. Matter of fact, they can't make complaints. There's got to be someone else that makes the complaint. To none will we sell, to no one will we refuse delay, right, or justice. They do it all the time. Matter of fact, I dump on them for that stuff. Selling their just us, okay? Because it's all Roman law. It's an inquisition. So when I file a lawsuit, I tell them they're selling their just us. Anyways. He is, however, in a sense, an officer of the state with an obligation to the court. So attorneys, and it's Roman law, and it's an inquisition.
What is
His first duties to the court, and to the public, not to the client. And whenever his duties to the client conflict as those as officer of the court in the administration of justice, the former must yield to the latter. Clients are also called wards of the court. A ward of the court is an imbecile. Person of unsound mind, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. A ward of the court's an imbecile. A ward of the court's not competent. Everything is about competence and incompetence. That's why they're representing you. That's why I like that document you had there from the mental health practitioner saying that you're perfectly sane, and I like that. I think I'm gonna do that for sure. Anyways, so that's why they're saying that's why they're representing you, because you're not competent to make decisions for yourself. Therefore, the attorney's going to make the decisions for you. There is no such thing as an incompetent sovereign. Do you know who you are? The Republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. So the attorney's job is to make sure there's no appealable issues. So think about that. How do they do that? They do it 3 ways. They fail to object to the denials of due process of law, and many of those denials, if you don't object to them by the trial, then you lose that opportunity to object. Yes?
That's actually a good point and worth noting, because I think sometimes when people get caught up in criminal court, if you look at the criminal rules of procedure, rule number 2 is there's only one form of law, it's civil law,
Right.
which means you have to go back to the other rule book because their favorite game is skipping the civil rules 1 through 12.
Right.
And that's typically where almost all of those objections lie.
Right. And so civil law is equivalent to Roman law.
And Glenn, it has to be on the record too.
It's just kind of circular logic, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
It's kind of all circular
They
things,
lay awake at night with this stuff.
you know.
But
I mean,
they do, on criminal cases, they always want to skip identity, they always wanna skip the jurisdictional issues, the officers, all
course.
those things that are in the first 10 rules, criminal court skates right on
Right,
past them.
right. Anybody that claims that name, yeah,
Yeah.
great, come on in.
And the attorney.
You can be that person, you know?
That's where the attorneys play into this, leave
Right.
the sheep to be sheared.
Absolutely.
Because it's their job to be
Right.
on top of those civil rules.
Right.
And it's the very first part of the case, when you go in, that's what
Yep.
counts.
Yep.
They
It's their
failed.
job to make sure that you don't know anything
That's
about
correct.
those civil
That's
rules.
correct.
They failed to object to the irregularities in procedure. They testify against you too. Did you know that? Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
They'll say that you did something when it's not true. That whether the prosecutor does it or whether your own attorney, both of them do it. And if the prosecutor does it, if you don't object or your attorney doesn't object, if you have an attorney, he's not going to object. If the prosecutor makes a statement about you, then you have to object because he's testifying. And under their rules of ethics, if you don't object, it's admitted as the truth. It's more, there's more. They testify against you, it's Roman law and it's an inquisition.
But they'll throw it out if you have an attorney because you can't be heard. if
That's
you
right.
have an attorney.
That's right. So you gotta be the one to be there.
And actually, the framework for that, again, goes back to the Bible and the 7 woes.
Right.
If you look at the 7 woes, that's what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. So-
I looked up there's case law that says you can object if you're a defendant and you do have an attorney. Jeopardize it and everything. It's valid.
Okay, well, that's good to know, but I don't like having an attorney. So how do they testify against you? First of all, they admit jurisdiction, okay? Just the fact that you have the attorney admits the jurisdiction of the court. They enter pleas for you, and you don't even know that's what's going on a lot of times. They falsely accuse you, and they continue cases. When they continue a case, then you just waived your right to a speedy trial.
Dirty sons of bitches.
Impropriety persona, in one's own proper person. It is a rule in pleading that pleas to the jurisdiction of the court must be pled impropriety persona, because if pleaded by attorney, they admit the jurisdiction. As an attorney is an officer of the court, he's presumed to plead after having obtained leave, which admits jurisdiction. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. A republic, if you can keep it. The privilege against self-incrimination is neither recorded to the passive resistance, nor the person who is ignorant of his rights, nor to one indifferent thereto. It is a fighting clause. Its benefits can be retained only by sustained combat. It cannot be retained by attorney or solicitor. It is valid only when insisted upon by a belligerent claimant in person. The one who's persuaded by honeyed words or moral suasion to stand, to testify or produce documents rather than to make a last-ditch stand simply loses the protection. Once he testifies the whole transaction, he must refuse to answer or produce and test the matter in contempt proceedings or by habeas corpus. And this is District Judge James Alger Fee, U.S. versus Johnson, 1947. How do the prosecutor and your own attorney and falsely accuse you? Under their rules of ethics, they're not allowed to make false statements against you, but your only remedy is to object to their false statements. If you have an attorney, you're not allowed to even speak. Now, Steve says that there's some stuff that's saying you can, so that would be interesting. I'd like to see that, Steve. If you could email that to me, that'd be great.
Well, this is something I looked at like about 30 years ago. I found it.
Okay.
I was in a court case and I found it.
Okay, so because of their rules of ethics, any statements they make that are not objected to are admitted as the truth, because you admitted them by failing to object. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. This is Roman law going on right here.
Dirty sons of.
This is all black robe military uniforms. I have exclusive content available on howtube.com. It's $9.99 a month for videos plus unlimited email consultations, but I'm not a liar. Well, I'm an attorney. No, I'm not a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only part these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception. My agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles.
Hey, Glenn's 5 till.
Okay, well, let's see. I'm on slide number 73, and I've got 190 total. So I guess we'll have to just wrap it up here in part 2. So well, this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yay!
All right, sounds good.
Bless you, Glenn. Good stuff, baby. Good stuff.
So I just want to answer any questions they have in the chat right now on YouTube. It doesn't look like there's any for me, so we're going to go ahead and end this stream. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll do part 2 maybe Wednesday night, or yeah, probably Wednesday night. I got to make arrangements for that, or next Tuesday.